Have you ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix? If so, consider sending it my way. Just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I've actually experienced the same glitch more than once. Twice, to be exact. And both events happened on the same stretch of road within about 2 months of each other. I've tried to get it to happen again by driving the same path with my dad at around the same time, but for some reason, I just cannot make it happen a third time. This happened about a year ago, and the second time was around 10 months ago. Both times it was midday because my dad and I were going to lunch together, which is something that we did every other weekend. We go around the same time every weekend, too. We randomly shuffle around where we're going. Sometimes we just have lunch at his house, but we also go out and eat every once in a while. One of the places that he likes to go is a small burger joint that is kind of in the middle of nowhere on the outskirts of our town. It's pretty much surrounded by trees at the end of a long stretch of road, and that looks like it was supposed to be zoned for a strip mall, but it never got built. It's kind of nice, because not a lot of people know where it is, so they pretty much just get regulars, and that's about it. Anyways, the stretch where this event has happened is near a section of road where there is a small cemetery. I don't know if that's related, if spirits have any effect on the Matrix, but I'm just saying that there is a cemetery in this stretch where things have happened. Both times it has happened, my dad and I pretty much have agreed with the way things played out. We've driven towards the cemetery, and right before we pass said cemetery, we start to hear what sounds like light jazz music. It almost sounds like lounge jazz, like the kind that you hear at a dentist office. It's soft, relaxing, and it seemingly comes from nowhere. There's no way either of our phones were playing it, and his car doesn't have a radio anymore since someone had broken in and stole it. The jazz music is faint enough that it almost sounds like it could be playing in a nearby building, but really loud. But it doesn't seem to be connected to any buildings, as it sounds like it's in the car. Then, after about a minute or so of the jazz music, we've both experienced a split second of what is basically pitch black darkness. By that, I mean that for half a second or so, everything just seems to go dark. Like the kind of darkness you experience when you blink, but involuntarily. We've both felt it, and we've both heard it, which is pretty much the only thing that has kept me from thinking that I am absolutely insane. The first instance of this was May of 2021, and the second was in July of 2021. We've gone down this road multiple times at the same time of day, going the same speed and going to the same place, and it hasn't happened again since. The first time it happened, it was weird, but the second time, we kind of freaked out when we both said the same thing about what had occurred. Now, every time we go that way, I fully brace myself and expect to have it happen again. But it doesn't. Maybe the Matrix has caught on and won't let me experience the glitch again, or maybe reality was patched and the dead zone was fixed. I don't know. Either way, it was weird and kind of creepy. Hi there. I'm a long-time listener, first-time contributor. I would probably file this story under a deja vu, but I think that would still fall under a glitch in the Matrix nowadays. This happened to me when I was in high school some 44 years ago. Yet it was so vivid that it has been etched into my mind since then, and now, many years into the future from that point in time, I have more to this side of the story, which might count as glitch number 2. Here is some backstory before I describe what might be considered glitch number 1, which was a deja vu type dream that I had. The year was 1978, when I was a junior and attended a small private high school in the pristine Santa Cruz Mountains of California. I fell head over heels for a boy who was a senior that year. He was a rough version of whom my parents would have wanted me to date, but nevertheless, I fell deeply in love with him. He had reddish, strawberry blonde curly hair, a funny yet dry sense of humor, and a very distinctive hobby for all manner of Volkswagens. We dated for almost 2 years. Now to the story. One night, somewhere in the middle of our time together in high school, I had a very elaborate and detailed dream about my future wedding day, which was not even on the radar at that point. I remembered the dream clearly when I awoke from a deep sleep. It was as if I were watching it from the back of the church. I could clearly see myself and my groom, and all of our wedding party, from the back as we faced the minister who was standing at the front of this beautiful church with a gorgeous and huge stained glass window that literally took up the whole wall behind the minister who was marrying us. But when I noticed the groom, he did not have the strawberry blonde curly hair like my current boyfriend. No, it was very dark brunette and straight hair. I recognized my bridesmaid because she was, and still is, my very best friend since we were in the 6th grade. I didn't recognize the best man or anyone else from the groom's side. When I awoke in the morning, I remember being very upset about that still clearly vivid dream because my groom did not seem to be the boy that I was dating, and with whom I was completely in love. It bothered me so much that I called my best friend and told her the whole dream, which etched it into my mind even more. The weeks went by, and I always had that dream in the back of my mind. Things were good between my boyfriend and I, so I eventually wrote it off as just a weird dream. We dated until I left for college at the end of 1979. Things became strained between us even before I moved to college. Needless to say, we broke up. It devastated me, but I struggled to move on. I eventually met a nice young man at our college. He was also funny. It seems that sense of humor is something that attracted me. We dated for 2 years, and we married at the end of 1982. When we got our wedding pictures back and I was perusing them carefully, when I almost fell off of my chair. Right there, amid this pile of pictures, was a view the photographer had from the back of the church showing me and my groom, the man that I did marry, standing facing the minister who was standing in front of a massive and beautiful stained glass window. It was the exact scene from my dream years prior. And yes, my new husband had dark brunette and straight hair. I now recognized the best man because we also attended the same college together, and he was my husband's best friend. Now, this leads me to glitch number 2, in the form of a vision that I had about my new husband. This was not a sleeping dream, but more like a quick daydream as I was packing up for our move from campus housing to our first apartment in life together. It hit me like a ton of bricks from out of nowhere. As I was reaching into the cupboard to unload our canned food into a cardboard box, I suddenly had a strong feeling accompanied with these words that went through my mind. Your husband will leave you later in life. What? That shook me to my core. Where did that come from? My thoughts were on packing canned goods into a cardboard box, and we were so happy with each other. It was even too soon in our young marriage to experience any real-life struggles together. My husband and I had a wonderful marriage, with typical marriage ups and downs. Nothing major. We had 2 beautiful and healthy daughters, as we created many wonderful and fun family memories. This lasted for 16 years, and yes, he did leave me for greener pastures. At which time, those words that seemed to be prophetic came flooding back into my mind. I wondered if it was meant to be something that was a warning to me, so that I could have somehow changed the future, or if it was just meant to prepare me somehow. I'll never know for sure because it was devastating to me, and it turned the course of our lives irrevocably. He has since moved on to his 3rd wife, but thankfully our daughters are doing well in life. It left some emotional scars on them, but they're happy and healthy, and building wonderful lives themselves. I could never quite figure out what happened to our marriage, but now that we're living in a time where things like glitch in the matrix, alternate realities, and shifting timelines are subjects being explored, my life feels like I might have switched realities, or jumped into an alternate universe, when my wonderful husband seemingly and suddenly left what was, for the most part, a fun, loving, and happy family. I'm supposed to start this story off by saying who it's by, so this story was posted to the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit by the user Wee-oo. I hope I said enough O's there, because there's like 6 of them. Anyways, to the story. This happened this afternoon, and I'm still super weirded out. I have yet to find a single plausible explanation to what went on. My husband and I live in a small work-in-progress cabin in the woods on an acreage in Atlantic Canada with 2 parrots, a rabbit, a senior citizen cat, and 2 absolutely rambunctious dogs. My husband can't say no to something fluffy that is in need of a home. Cleaning up after this zoo is quite the daily effort. As I was going about my chores today, I decided to toss the dogs outside for a while so I could suck up the previous day's layer of dog fluff, without them declaring war on our vacuum machine, as their hatred for the vacuum is quite passionate. Once the dogs were outside and merrily jumping around in the mud puddles, I got to work on the floor. I did a really thorough vacuum job today, even getting on my hands and knees to suck up the fluffies that were nesting underneath the table and furniture. After I wrapped up the chores, I went to go retrieve the dogs. The dog run is accessible by a doggy door that is off of a room that is completely separate from the room I was cleaning. As I already mentioned, the cabin is a work in progress and entirely unfinished, and the room with the doggy door is the newest room to be added on to the building, and is even more unfinished than the rest. I entered into this room and shut and latched the door behind me, as I knew the soggy dog stampede was going to be fierce. I planned on letting the pooches dry off in that separate room while I went to town to run a couple of errands. I opened the doggy door, and 2 canines bounded into the room and began to shake and pounce and play with all of their dogly enthusiasm. They were soaked and muddy, and seemingly more than content to hang out in this room, so I undid the latch on the door that led to the main room and carefully opened it a crack just enough to squeeze my body through so that the dogs could not follow after me. I closed the door behind me, and I latched it shut. I picked up the water bowl and reached for some toys so that I could toss them into the side room and keep the dogs entertained while I was gone. As soon as I entered the main room and looked down, however, I absolutely froze. There were fresh, muddy paw prints on the floor that I had just cleaned. I could still hear the dogs bouncing around on the other side of the door in the room that I had locked them into. They did not follow me, and yet here I was, looking at fresh, muddy paw prints that were not here a moment ago. Perhaps there was mud on the bottom of my flip-flops, and I had made the prints myself? I lifted my feet one at a time, and the bottoms of my flip-flops were totally clean. The prints were not from me. Then, I lifted my gaze and was horrified to see that the paw prints continued, all down the length of the room from the kitchen to the front door of the cabin, where they stopped suddenly, as though a muddy dog had taken a single run through the length of the room and then completely vanished. The prints only went in one direction. There were no smudges of mud or backward prints to indicate a muddy dog changing directions in any way. Just a straight line of fresh, wet, muddy prints. And then nothing. They weren't there moments before. My dogs had not entered the room, and they were still locked up in the other room. There were no other creatures in this room, and no possible entrances for rogue invaders. I have no explanation. I don't understand it. I feel like I'm either losing my mind entirely, or else in an alternate timeline that one of the dogs slipped past me into the cleaned room and runs down the floor, and somehow the timelines bled together for a moment. Just long enough for alternate dimension dog to leave the muddy paw prints and then vanish back to his own timeline. Before I start my story, it's important to establish a few things that have been happening lately. About 2 months ago, we had an attempted break-in in our home. It was around 10 at night, and I was in the living room when someone attempted to break our back door open with a crowbar. Thankfully, they noticed me and took off, but it was really scary to see that thing firsthand, and to be that close to someone that was violating the sanctity of my home. Because of this, I begged my husband to install some security cameras, so there's now a camera that looks across our living room towards the back door, and a few others that show the entrance and exit points. On top of this, I've also been losing sleep because of the situation, and I've been jumping up to every small sound. I've been trying to find ways to keep myself calm and to relax, and I found some solace in doing cross-stitch patterns. For the most part, I just do cute little animal images, and I really enjoy it. I think that's all the context that's necessary for the story. So, the other night I was sitting in the living room with my husband, falling asleep on the couch next to me. The TV was playing some random show, and I was doing my cross-stitch pattern. I had just started a cute little pattern that had a couple of ducks on it, and I was trying to get certain parts done first, when I started getting that weird anxiety feeling that I've been getting since the night of that incident. It's kind of like a panic attack, I think, but not fully there. It's just like a weird hit of adrenaline that's telling me that something is going on. I do my normal checks of the back doors, the windows, the front doors, basically just making sure that no one is around the house. It's a dumb ritual, but it's what I feel like I need to do. When I'm sure that there's no one around, I decided that I just wanted to go to bed, and that I wasn't really feeling the cross-stitch anymore. I tossed the pattern into my basket near my spot on the couch, and I woke up my husband so that we could go to bed. All of this was pretty normal. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until about 2 days later, I went to grab my cross-stitch to continue on it, and I had to pause just staring at it, because it was almost done. Every single color and part that I hadn't worked on yet was finished. But the part that I was saying I wanted to get done first hadn't been completed. I was nothing shy of confused and mildly frustrated. I asked my husband if he had finished my cross-stitch, and he laughed at me, and then said that he would have had no idea how to even start on this thing. I had the idea to check the camera and see if he was messing with me, or if I was sleepwalking and sleep stitching, but at no point over those 2 days had I touched my craft basket at all. The last time on the footage that I touched anything over there was the night when I got up and looked at the doors and windows to see if there was someone outside. Then I saw me toss it into the basket. I know that I wasn't done with it. I hadn't even started most of the sections, and I really don't think that my husband is messing with me. On top of that, the footage shows literally nobody touching it since I threw it into the basket. Of course, the camera isn't that good, so you can't see how finished it was from that, but I know how much I had and had not completed. I'm a little upset because I was using this as a form of therapy, but I guess I'll just have to start a new one. And my plea to the Matrix, please don't finish my cross-stitch patterns for me. Half of the fun of the whole thing is seeing the image come together as you work on it. I know this story is going to sound weird and crazy, but hear me out. I'm not too familiar with this subreddit, but a friend of mine who's always talking about metaphysics, the Twilight Zone, simulation type stuff, loves this sub and keeps telling me to post this. In fact, no doubt he'll read this. Anyways, here's my story. 2 weeks ago, I was about to get ready for a party at 6. Just before I started getting ready, one of my friends messaged me super excited because a boy she's had a crush on for the last 4 years finally asked her out. And he was coming with her to the party. While I was texting her back, my younger brother walked into my room and asked if I could drive him to his friend's house, which I agreed to do. Then, I went to the bathroom to take a shower and do my makeup. So, I got in the shower, but when I went to wash my hair, I realized that my conditioner was finished. I was pretty ticked off because I had only bought it a couple of days beforehand, and it's an expensive brand. My younger sister always uses up my things, so I knew that she had used it. She also trashed the bathroom, leaving water everywhere and her dirty towel on the floor. So, I was pissed off, and I was about to get out of the shower in order to tell her off and get some more conditioner. But as I went to get out, I realized at the last second that she'd kicked the grippy mat that we have at the bottom of our shower tub up. Our shower tub is super slippery without the grip mat. So, as I went to step out, my foot slipped, and I fell with my neck down on the edge of the tub. Time seemed to slow down in my head, and I remember my last thought was, wow, this is how I die? How stupid. But here's the thing. At the moment of impact, I woke up in a start back in my bed. I know it sounds stupid and cheesy, like something from a dumb Netflix show, but there's literally no other way to describe what happened. I was lying in bed right before I got up to shower the first time, but I don't remember falling asleep. And the thing is, I've been a lucid dreamer for the last 5 or so years, and if this was a dream, it was way more vivid than anything I have ever experienced. What weirded me out, though, was the exact same friend who texted me the first time messaged me after I woke up to tell me that the boy she had a crush on had asked another girl out. And she was pretty bummed about it and didn't want to come to the party. I was weirded out that there was some similarity between that and the dream, but I didn't think much of it at first. As I went to reply, my younger brother came in to ask if I would take him to his friend's house. All the blood drained from my face. He just stood in the doorway looking confused and asked me what was wrong. I rushed into the bathroom feeling like I was losing my mind, and I went to check the conditioner bottle. I know this sounds completely crazy, but the bottle was finished up just like before, and the grip mat was kicked up. At this point, I went to lie back down in bed, and I texted my friend to tell them that I wouldn't be going to the party. And I would like to finish this story up by giving a shout out and saying hello to the OP's friend who told them to post the story. So, hello Zane. I hope you're doing well. Recently, my mother told me a story that sent shivers down my spine. I'm not sure if it fully fits what you call a glitch in the Matrix, but it's definitely strange. It was on New Year's Eve. Someone sent my mom a sort of copy-paste New Year's wish on Facebook. It went something like, "It's the end of the year. May the next one bless you with health, wealth, and happiness." My mother decided to copy and send the message to a friend too, but something went wrong. When she hit send, only a small part of the message went through. It's the end. A glitch like that has never happened to her. It wouldn't be that big of a deal, but that friend died 3 days later. It was the last message my mom ever sent to him. Just, it's the end. Did a glitched message predict this friend's death? When she was telling me this story, I saw goosebumps appear on her arms, and I can't blame her. I guess that I should start by saying a few disclaimers. The only two people that live in our apartment are myself and my roommate, whom we'll call Tammy. Tammy is a very sweet girl that I've been friends with since I was in elementary school, and I don't think she could or would ever lie about anything, even the mundane things, to me or anyone that she cared for. Tammy is also deathly allergic to two things: peanut butter and shellfish. One of those is relevant to the story. No one else has entered our home for several months. We haven't had any friends over, and neither of us drinks or does any sort of substance to the point where our memories would be so bad that this situation would make any sense. Now, on to the story. A few weeks ago, my roommate and I went to get lunch for her birthday at a decent steakhouse that she loves. I told her that I would pay for it, as I had a bit of extra cash, and I knew that her parents weren't going to do anything to make her birthday special. Our dinner was actually really good. She had a ribeye with fries and macaroni and cheese, and I had their chicken Alfredo pasta dish. I know for a fact that I ordered chicken Alfredo, one, because I gave a bite of it to Tammy, and two, because I'm very sensitive to her allergies. I love shrimp, but I will not order anything that is shrimp or has shrimp in it if I'm around her, or if I'll be bringing it home. I am always careful about this no matter where we go. Skip ahead to the next day, around lunchtime. I was sitting on the couch with Tammy and we were just watching TV when she remembered that she had leftovers in the fridge and got excited. She jumped off the couch and ran into the kitchen. She opened the first container and immediately tossed it back into the fridge with a look like, "What the hell?" on her face. I asked if she was okay, and she asked me what I had eaten at the steakhouse that previous night. I told her that I had the chicken Alfredo, and then she asked, "Then why is there shrimp in your leftovers?" Like I said, I am always careful about shrimp, and I am super sensitive to the fact that shellfish will kill her, so I thought she just saw something wrong. Sure enough, I go into the kitchen and grab the container, and it is shrimp Alfredo, not chicken. I grabbed it and walked away to the other corner of the kitchen, and I pretty much said, "How the hell is that possible?" While I was standing there and she was heating up her food, we talked about the whole thing. I told her that I'd had chicken, and I asked her what she remembered about what I ordered. She mentioned that, for some reason, she really could not remember anything about my dinner. I asked her if she remembered trying it, and she said that she didn't. I told her that I had given her a bite and that she said it was really good, and then mentioned that she had made a joke about how, if I wasn't the one paying, she would have gotten something cheaper like that because of how good it was. For whatever reason, she seriously could not remember this joke, nor could she remember trying the Alfredo. I then went and grabbed my receipt to prove that I had ordered chicken Alfredo, and when I pulled it out of my wallet, it said shrimp. It seriously said shrimp Alfredo, which I would not have ordered. I know that I ordered chicken Alfredo, and I know that she tried some of it, which, if it were shrimp, she would have stopped breathing. I have no idea why or how it changed from chicken to shrimp Alfredo, but I know that I would not have gotten shrimp because I was with her. And if I had ordered shrimp Alfredo while I was at lunch with her, she would have likely looked at me funny and said something about it. I ended up eating it cold in the back end of the kitchen while she fixed up her food, and then I took the container straight out to the dumpster. It was good, sure, but it was nowhere near as good as what I'd had the night before. So that's my glitch. My weird food-related how the hell did that happen glitch in the Matrix. I went to the movies this weekend. Afterwards, I stopped by the ladies' room along with everybody else. When it was my turn, I was near the back of the line. Several stall doors opened simultaneously, and I had my pick. One lady, referring to the stall that she had just left, said, "Don't go in that one, it's out of paper." So I went into the one next to it. I had been near the end of the line for the bathroom, so the noise from people washing their hands and flushing had died down. I heard someone go into the stall next to me and close the door. I felt the door close the way one does in a bathroom with side-by-side stalls. Everything shakes for a moment, and you can hear the latch close. I heard her sigh and shift around, but I didn't see her feet or anything like that. It was the stall without paper, and I was stuck between extreme shyness and knowing that due to the bathroom code, she would probably ask for some paper. Then, I thought of a solution. I quickly flushed and stood up. I rolled the paper down from the dispenser until it was almost touching the floor, so the person in the stall next to me could see it, and they could grab it if they tried. Satisfied that I would not have to say anything to a stranger, but that they would still have the paper they needed, I left the stall to wash my hands. As I turned on the water, I glanced behind me in the mirror to see if she had figured out to grab the toilet paper from my stall. I was shocked to see that the stall door was open. There was nobody there. There was nobody left in the bathroom at all. It was a weird feeling, sort of like the sound draining out of the room as I stared, unbelieving. Where did she go? She didn't have time to leave. Since there was no one else in the bathroom at this point, I would have heard her. The whole thing took place in about 20 seconds. For from the time she closed the door to the time I left my stall. I never heard or saw her stall door open, I didn't hear any feet leaving the bathroom, and I didn't hear the main bathroom door open or close. And on top of everything, this happened while I was on vacation. Because, as shy as I am, I was hyper aware of my surroundings because I was trying to sense the culture of the locals to fit in. So I was paying more attention than usual, if that makes sense. If I hadn't recently learned of this subreddit, I would probably have blown this off as me being spacey or something like that. I've blown off other situations in the past that I could not explain. I still can't explain it, but at least I know I'm not the only one who experiences these kinds of things. My parents and I have both been experiencing glitches in the Matrix these past couple of days. One of the experiences was long, too. It happened at the mall. We've had weird experiences there before, but always just thought it was coincidence. After this, my mom and I definitely believe there is something paranormal/off about that area. First off, let me explain the layout of the mall. I would consider this mall to be pretty big. There's the main part of the mall, and around that are a bunch of strip malls. It's easy to get lost and disoriented. The mall is also in a rural area, so it's hilly, and there are a lot of trees and shrubs around. We drive into the parking lot. At first we notice that it seems kind of empty, but we don't think anything of it. That mall tends to not be crowded, and that's why we chose to go there. Once we enter the mall, my mom and I go our separate ways. The first thing that we both noticed that seemed odd was that everything seemed sluggish, and the mall appeared to be way smaller. We didn't think much of it since this was the first time that we'd been there in around 5 years or so. So, let's fast forward to the point where we're done shopping and we want to leave. This is when things got weird. We had decided to meet up at Macy's. I was in the Macy's a couple of minutes before and was familiar with the layout. I went to the area my mom said she was in, looked around, but I couldn't find her. We kept in contact, texting back and forth, and tried to better explain where we were. After about 25 minutes of that, I got frustrated and decided to meet her at the sitting area outside of the Macy's. We then call each other saying that we're seated outside, but still could not find each other. Then, my mom mentioned that she is near the Forever 21, which annoyed me, because the Forever 21 is not near the Macy's. It's near the JCPenney, which my mom did go to when we first got to the mall earlier that day. I figured that she probably would have left and went into Macy's. When I told her that she was at JCPenney the whole time, she was confused, but we brushed it off. We did think it was that the layout was the same, and maybe there was nothing to indicate that she was at a different store, like during checkout. Now, the drive is when things get weirder. This mall is not that close to my mom's house. It's about 25 miles, and the drive is usually around 45 minutes. We've done this drive a lot, and I went to school in the area the mall has always been, and it's 15 minutes from the school, and the school has always been around 30 minutes from the house. First off, we needed to make a stop. It seemed like we got to the exit quickly, but I didn't think anything of it. We get what we need at the pharmacy and we headed home. It took 15 minutes. My mom even looked at the clock because she remembered thinking that it was odd. And I just mapped the pharmacy. It's 21 miles and a 31-minute drive. She wasn't speeding. She never does. It was just like a chunk of the drive disappeared. So, last week was a glitchy week, but this was the weirdest one that I experienced. This happened about 17 years ago. I had just moved into my first house with 2 roommates, one male and one female. I was 20 at the time and am female. My female roommate, we'll call her Lisa, and I had been friends for a couple of years and were pretty close. We had gone to the Renaissance Fair that summer and both acquired beautiful silver Celtic earrings. About 3 months later, Lisa was in a car accident that took her life. A couple of weeks after her accident, I went to get my Celtic earrings from my jewelry box, and I could only find one. I was really upset because we had acquired them together. I had my male roommate come and help me look for it. My jewelry box was on top of my dresser, so we looked in all my dresser drawers and moved the dresser fully out of the room to try to find the missing earring. We eventually gave up and figured it was vacuumed up and thrown away since I hadn't worn them for weeks. Because my male roommate and I couldn't afford the house without Lisa, we moved out a couple of months after her accident. As I was packing up my room, I bent down to start packing my bottom drawer of my dresser, and there sitting right in front of the dresser was my missing earring. There was no way that, if it had been there the whole time, that the vacuum wouldn't have sucked it up, nor would me nor my roommate missed seeing it. I like to think that it was Lisa giving me back the last memorable thing we bought together. I still wear them to this day, and I think of her every time. I don't have an explanation for this one. Basically, for the last 5 years, I've had a key ring with only 3 keys on it. It had my car key, my house key, and the extra key to my kid's truck. About 1.5 years ago, I added a Lego minifigure keychain. Otherwise, it's been the same 3 keys for the last 5 years. I use it almost every day. I've taken it all over the world with me when I traveled because I use it to get into my house when I get home. I used it to get into my house last night. I had to pop out this afternoon. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone, locked up, and left. When I got home, I tried to use the key to unlock my front door, and it didn't work. I tried the door lock and the deadbolt, same key, and no luck. So, I popped open the garage door to use the other door to get into the house. That door was locked, same key, and the key did not work. So, at this point, I was pretty dumbfounded because the one house key on my keyring isn't working. Eventually, I was able to get into the house through a window, so I got that going for me. The key still doesn't work. I found and tested my spare key, and it does work. The key on my keychain sort of looks like the spare key. It's the same type of key, but has a slightly different notch. Consequently, I'm a little weirded out that the house key on my keychain is not my house key. The key pattern on the house key attached to my keychain and the spare key that works are different. Just to add, the key on my keychain and the spare that works are 2 different keys with 2 different patterns. The difference isn't from wear. The key on my keychain has a shorter pattern than the one that works on the house. The OP then posted an update. I wanted to post an update since the comments were rolling in, and I have some time to post some extra information. Of the 2 keys, the spare key is the one that works, and the key on my keychain is the one that doesn't. The key from the keychain has a ton more wear, but it has a different cut and is clearly from a different batch of keys. I still don't know what this key is for, since it doesn't seem to work on any lock in my house. As a quick refresher for those that are reading the update, the house key was the only key on my keychain that was not a car key, and it had been on that chain for 6 years. The day before the day in discussion, it worked to get into the house. The day in question, I went out to get a burger at a restaurant. The key worked when I left. The keys, house key, truck key, and car key, were only out of my pocket when they were in the ignition of my car. At the restaurant, I sat at the bar and the keys stayed in my pocket. No one sat next to me at the bar, and the only person I interacted with was the bartender on the other side of the bar. I sat at the bar to eat because I was out solo, and I didn't want to take up a table. After eating, I came home, and the key did not work in any lock. Eventually, I was able to make it inside the house. I found my spare key, which does work, compared the keys, and I found them to be different. Could someone have swapped the keys? Possible, but extremely unlikely. The keys were in my possession, or locked up in my house for the whole period of this occurrence. Could someone have broken in and swapped the keys? Again, possible, but extremely unlikely. I live in a secluded-ish HCOL and very safe area in a very small house where you can hear everything. All the doors and windows in my house are loud. It is extremely doubtful that anyone got into the house in the time period where this occurrence occurred. Moreover, it's even less likely that they got in, took the key off the ring, replaced it with a similar key, and got out quietly. There's nothing in this house that is interesting enough for someone to implement that kind of scheme, especially given the fact that I'm usually here since I work from my home. And there are much better targets in my neighborhood. And are the locks changed? Yeah, not only are they getting changed today, but I'm also moving to a new home one town over. The decision to move was made months ago, and has nothing to do with the weird key that showed up. Thank you to all those who were worried about my safety. I'm perfectly fine and safe here in my quiet bungalow until I move. So that was this week's Glitch in the Matrix collection, the first collection of September. Hard to believe that we are already in September, honestly. It's just crazy that it's already gone this quick. This year's almost over. We're already in the final stretch, the final 4 months, that last third of the month, the last 33%. So, yeah. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of stories, and if you did, please do consider hitting that thumbs up button. If you didn't, you're free to hit the thumbs down button. Just know you're helping me out either way. It's your decision. If you're new to the channel and like what you heard, you can also consider subscribing. That would be super helpful. Never expected, but always appreciated. And there's other stuff you can do. Joining, tipping with the thanks feature, memberships, which I already said joining, Patreon, stuff like that, where you get early access to my content like this, if you so choose to do so. Again, never ever expected, always, always appreciated. The final thing you can do is leave me a comment with what is known as the Word of the Week. The Word of the Week, I give you a word, you put it in a comment, your name gets put up on the screen with your comment at the end of the next video, next Glitch video specifically. On the screen now, and probably a few seconds before right now, are the comments that were left for last week's Glitch in the Matrix video. Each and every single one of these people took the leap and left me a comment with the Word of the Week. So, a huge, huge thank you to each and every single one of you for doing so. Now, moving on to this week's Word of the Week. The Word of the Week is valid. V-A-L-I-D. Having legal efficacy or force, well-grounded or justifiable, being at once relevant and meaningful, logically correct, or appropriate to the end in view are all the definitions of valid. The other thing that is valid is you. You are valid. You are important. You are loved. and you're the best you that you can be. Never, ever forget that. And never let anyone tell you otherwise, because they're wrong. Yeah. Anyways, friends, I hope you all have a beautiful day. I look forward to your words of the week, and all that such stuff, good stuff, such. The stuff is good. So, anyway, I'll see you all in the next one. But until then, friends, sleep well.
This is my first post here, and this happened just about 1 hour ago, so my memory is still pretty fresh. First off, I'm living very rural, in a small village with maybe 10 to 15 houses. Fairly close to a highway though. You can drive there within maybe 5 minutes, and also about 10 minutes away from the town. If you cross the street, it only takes about a 10-minute walk to reach the forest. First, Christmas Day. On the afternoon, my partner and I decided to go for a little digestive walk, as we were really stuffed from all the food. It was around 1700, and already quite dark when we left. We had a big and bright LED flashlight with us though. I also took my camera and my flash, as I love taking pictures of nature at night. We decided to walk on a little country road towards the forest, then turn right, following a small graveled cycle track close to the forest border, which connects our village and the next, maybe about 15 to 20 minutes walk between them. In the middle part of this track, you have to walk through a small bit of forest. It's rather dark and the trees are very high and quite dense. Once we entered, I saw my flashlight reflecting on something and recognized a car parked there on the side of the track, very close to the trees. This struck me as quite odd, of course, as cars are not allowed to drive there, and the path is very narrow and hidden anyway, so I was a bit cautious at this point. My partner pointed the light inside of the car, and it seemed to be empty. I also noticed at this point that the windows were completely frozen, so it must have been parked there for quite a while. A bit in front of the car, I spotted a tree with an intriguing structure. I asked my partner to point the flashlight towards it so I could focus a bit better and photograph it with my flash. After I took a few images, though, my partner suddenly whispered to me, "There's someone standing behind us in the middle of the road. He's just looking at us." Nobody had followed us the entire way. I had kept looking around and behind us occasionally, because at this time in the evening and close to the border of the forest, sometimes there are boars, and it's mating season, so they're more aggressive than usual. Indeed, there was now a man standing behind us, staying just out of the flashlight's reach. He wasn't saying anything, just standing there, facing us. At first, I thought he might be startled, as it may seem a bit weird if someone's just taking photos around your car, not that it was even legal to drive on that path in the first place. I decided to get up and confront him from a distance, explaining to him that I was only taking photos of that tree. He didn't react at all, and just stood completely still. I went on to ask him if he needed some light, and he replied very quickly that it wasn't necessary. It was odd, but I was still calm. Surely there was a normal explanation for his behavior. Nonetheless, my partner and I decided to just GTFO and followed the path leading to the next village. It was about 5 to 7 minutes until we reached it. I remembered the letters on his license plate, not the numbers though, unfortunately, and Googled it. It turned out that he was from a city about 6 hours away from our village. Mind you, the country I live in is in a very strict lockdown right now, so you're only allowed to travel even by car if you have very urgent reasons. After we reached the first lantern of the next village, we looked back and observed the car driving just a bit out of the forest, turning around once it saw us, and going back inside. I was able to see that he'd parked there again, turned the lights off, and didn't leave the forest once more. After this, we went home on a much longer way than initially intended, as I didn't want to go back through there for obvious reasons. Our flashlight battery died on the way, and my phone battery was low, so I didn't want to call the police back then, but I called them as soon as I arrived home and gave them all the details. A big regret was that I didn't memorize the whole license plate, but it was just so surprising that I seriously didn't think about it. Also, it only occurred to me as really strange when I thought about the frozen windows and how he could have possibly walked behind us. Plus, with him having no light and not responding, he also seemed to be sneaking up on us when I sat down to take the photo. I think I was very lucky to have my partner, the camera, and the bright light with me. I don't want to imagine what could have happened if I was alone. Edit. When I told my housemate, she theorized that he may have actually been spying on the houses very close to the forest border, as you can easily look into their backyards without being seen. I think it's quite likely. I had the thought of photographing the car when I'd entered the forest part of the path, but somehow I felt unwell about it and decided not to do it, despite it being the interesting scene. In hindsight, I believe this saved me, as he must have been hiding behind the trees close to the car and forest entrance. If he really was planning a burglary, I think it's not unlikely he may have attacked me if he realized I had a potential photo of his car with a recognizable license plate. So I used to work as a personal trainer at a very familiar gym in my city to help pay for college. The neighborhood this gym was located has 2 other gyms across the street, so we would have a lot of clients changing from place to place. I worked the night shift since I was out of class at about 6 p.m. and worked from 6:30 to 10:30 p.m. Usually a lot of guys would go for experimental classes at night, and I was known for working with the bodybuilders. It was around 9 p.m. when this huge guy with a very arrogant posture walked in for an experimental class. The secretary immediately sent him to me, and I was more than happy to help him out, although I was pretty sure he already worked out some and needed no help whatsoever. Weird, but that's okay. Throughout the whole hour, though, this guy would ask me very personal questions. Where do you live? Are you single? What's your shoe size? What the fuck, by the way? Etc. As I was working, I politely tried to keep our conversation focused on training and exercises and those sorts of things. When the class was over, he looked over to me and said, "Hey, can I have your number?" "I'm sorry, but I have a fiancé." This was true as well. "Are you sure?" I usually don't take no for an answer. "Yes, I'm just here to help you exercise properly, nothing else." At this point, the man put his finger in my face and says this, "Well, when I get my gun, you won't say no to me again," and walked right out the door. For almost a month after, I needed to ask a male coworker to go with me to the parking lot late at night, because this guy would always be at the corner, waiting for me to get out. He would stare at me, smile, and wait for me to leave. Later, I found out he was at the gym across the street, and even took my car's license plate. I had to ask one of my clients that was a cop to scare him out. Until this day, I still can't get his smiling face out of my head. This happened when I was 13. I'm a girl, by the way, and in 8th grade. The middle school I went to was about a 15-minute walk away, so not very far at all. For context, my older brother and I grew up in East LA, in a small house that had a metal gate and both the front and back doors had a black metal screen door and a wooden one as well. During the day, we would always leave the wooden door open and have the black door closed and locked tight. Except for this day. That day, I came home from school and had about an hour before anyone else would be behind me. I was really thirsty, so I rushed inside, grabbed a drink, and sat down at the kitchen table, which was only about 10 feet away from the door. I heard the metal gate swing open and was surprised, as no one should have been coming home that early. I got up to see who it was, and what I saw was an older man, probably in his 60s. He had short white hair and a long white beard. He was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt, torn jeans, and sunglasses. I remember thinking he looked almost exactly like Santa Claus, except for dirty and a lot creepier. He knocked on the metal screen door and asked me if my parents were home. I was a dumb kid at the time and said that they weren't, honestly. He got this big smile on his face and said that he collected donations for needy children. I told him sorry, but I didn't have any money. He told me that sometimes children donated old toys. I said I didn't have any of those lying around either. He insisted that I must have some I didn't want anymore. He was beginning to creep me out when I noticed that I hadn't locked the door when I came inside. I tried to keep my cool as I slowly and very carefully locked the door. I did my best to keep him talking so that he might not notice. A minute or two later and he still wouldn't leave, so I decided I would pretend to go check for toys, then say I didn't have any so he would hopefully just go away. I told him I would go check, but as I turned and took a few steps down the hall, I could clearly hear him yanking at the door trying to pull it open. I didn't want him to know I had heard, so I kept walking down the hall and into a random room. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, and the only phone in the house was in the kitchen. I thought about what to do, and decided to stick with my plan I'd made beforehand. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I walked out, hoping he would have just left. Nope. Creepy Santa Man was still waiting there. I told him sorry, but I didn't find anything. He sighed and said alright, he would just check another time. He left and walked across the street. I watched from the kitchen window, peeking through the blinds, as he just stood there in the street, staring at my house for about 45 minutes. My brother and a few of his friends finally came walking down the street. As my brother came inside, and his friends kept walking, the man walked around the corner and disappeared. I told my brother what had happened, and he walked outside to take a look, but of course the creepy Santa Man was already long gone. When my mom came home, we told her what happened as well. She called the police, but all they did was say to call back if he showed up again. Thankfully, though, he never did. First of all, I'm French, so please forgive my mistakes. Second of all, my story is somewhat long, but I think it's worth it. Anyway, let's get started. It all started 2 years ago. I dropped out of school. I was home every day, suffering from depression and social anxiety. Since both of my parents worked, this meant I was alone in my house a lot of the time. So one day, I was alone just chilling, watching Netflix and eating some snacks in my room, when all of a sudden I could hear the phone ringing. I never really answered the interphone when I'm home alone because of my anxiety, so I just ignored it, even if the person was really persistent. Then, a few seconds later, I heard noises in the hall of my residence. I live in the ground floor, so when people make noises, I can easily hear it. I assumed at first it was the neighbors, but a few seconds later, I could hear someone ringing and knocking on my door quite brutally. With my anxiety issues, I started to feel quite anxious then and there, and I grabbed a knife just in case this person was trying to break in. After that, though, all I could hear was silence. Just when I thought it was all over, only 1 or 2 minutes later, suddenly I heard someone who was literally beating my kitchen window so hard that my window popped open. At this point, I was hiding in the hallway with my knife, so I got to see the man's face when he opened the window and looked into the kitchen to see if anybody was there. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, but when I discreetly looked at the man's face, it was extremely disturbing. He was very chill, cold, relaxed, no emotions. He looked into the kitchen one last time before turning around and leaving. I knew there was something wrong with this guy, but I was so scared that I called my aunt to pick me up. I really didn't want to spend more time at home after what just happened. So I was waiting there, still holding my knife and anxious as fuck, all the way until she came. Days after this incident, though, I didn't see this guy again. So that was 2 years ago. But yesterday my dad told me something he'd never told me before because he didn't want me to be anxious at the time. 2 sisters from my neighborhood saw a man hanging around my house for quite a few days, especially around my bedroom window. My window was just in front of the residence parking lot, and the guy was hiding behind cars, stalking me through my window, and I had no clue of what was happening. One day, one of the sisters managed to take a photo of the guy, so I guess he knew he had been discovered. The girl who took the photo told my dad about all of this, and my dad watched to see if the man was still hanging around our residence, but he never saw him, and since then, nobody around us has ever seen him either. This happened to me just a few days ago, and I wanted to chronicle everything before I forgot any details. It's a bit long, so please bear with me. I work at a popular retail store in a mall close to my on-campus apartment. I was home for winter break and decided to work Christmas Eve since I was promised time and a half, and I could use the money to buy some extra Christmas presents. My childhood home is not very far from my apartment, but it's about an hour drive from my work to my childhood home. Our holiday hours were extended this year, and I was given a closing shift for Christmas Eve. The store closed at 10 p.m., and the closing shift ended at 10:30, meaning that I would be getting home at around midnight after swinging through a drive-thru to grab something to eat. The closing shift at the store usually had 2 employees and a manager working, but the other employee that was supposed to close with me was out sick, so that night it was just me and the manager. While the manager emptied and counted the cash drawers and wrote the daily report, I gathered up all the trash and cardboard and left it all by the back door in the stockroom. I dusted and vacuumed until the manager was finished with the daily report. Then he put in the combination to disable the alarm and held open the back door for me to take out the trash and cardboard. This was the part that it was usually the most helpful to have 2 employees instead of 1, because the dumpster was walled off, and the manager had to wait by the door to make sure no one walked into the store. It wasn't too far away though, and I wanted to get home as soon as possible, so I carried all the trash out myself. Our store shared the dumpster with only 3 other stores, all of which had closed either before or after us, so I wasn't expecting to see anyone there. I was so startled that I dropped all my bags when I saw that someone was digging through the trash. He looked up at me when he heard the bags fall. "Oh, hi, I accidentally dropped my wallet in there. Could you help me grab it?" he asked. 1,000 red flags went off in my brain, and I immediately began to back away. I don't think I can. I need to take out the trash and get back to my store for work," I said, trying to walk towards the store slowly. "Which store do you work at?" he asked. I'm not sure why I told him, but I did tell him the store I worked at, and he nodded. "Oh, nice. You can just leave those bags here. I'll toss them out for you when I'm done looking." I went back into the store at that point, a little creeped out, but not really suspecting anything else. I told my boss what had happened, and he laughed a little and offered to walk me to my car, as I was parked in the lot behind the store, and he was parked in the parking garage attached to the main mall. I declined and walked to the nearly empty parking lot. There were only 3 other cars in the lot, including mine. One was parked close to the back entrance of a neighboring restaurant, and the other car was parked just a few spots away from mine. I couldn't see the person inside, but the car was on, and it looked like they were trying to warm up the car from the inside before scraping off the ice on the windshield. I glanced at the car a few times just to mentally jot down the make and model, a blue Honda Accord, before getting into my car and locking the doors. I called my parents to let them know I was just now leaving, and I would be stopping to grab dinner on the way home, so not to wait up. I kept my eyes peeled for different fast food joints on the side of the highway, but the majority of them were closed as it was 11 p.m. on a Christmas Eve. I was getting hungrier and hungrier as I got closer and closer to the exit for my house. I had decided to just scrounge up some leftovers at home as I drove through my town, when I saw a subway with blinking lights that said, "Open late." I pulled into the parking lot of the subway and saw the red LED sign indicating it was open. I walked into the sandwich shop and took a look around, as it seemed pretty empty. I called out to the empty store and was able to get the attention of the only person seemingly working there. "Oh, I thought I had locked that door. We just closed, actually," he said. "Come on, man. I just got off work and I just want to grab something to eat before I go to bed. I'll be really quick, I promise." I begged him as nicely as possible. He sighed and agreed, probably taking pity on how exhausted I looked. We talked for a little bit about working the late shift on Christmas Eve, as he made my sandwich before a group of teenage boys walked into the store. "We're closed, guys. I'm going to lock the store after I'm done making hers," he said. "But I want a sandwich," one of the boys whined. "Alright, fine." The subway employee got out from behind the counter and locked the door, so no one else would be able to get in. He could ensure the teenagers would be his last customers of the night. He finished making my sandwich and left me to pick out my drink and chips at the soda fountain. Most of the boys only bought bags of chips or cookies, so they were all finished before I finished filling up my soda, and the subway employee disappeared into the back. I put the lid to my cup on and was looking for a straw when something caught the corner of my eye. The man from the dumpster was waiting in the parking lot right next to my car. He was sitting on the hood of the car that was parked next to mine, and it was that same blue Honda Accord. I started to really freak out at that point. There was no reason for this guy to be in my town, an hour away from the mall, at the exact place I decided to stop, if he wasn't following me. And what was he doing on the hood of his car? It was the day before Christmas, and it was snowing and below 30 degrees. "Hey, can you guys walk me to my car?" I asked the group of boys. "Yeah, what's wrong? Are you alright?" one of the boys asked me. "Oh, I'm fine. I just don't want to slip on any ice on accident," I lied. I still felt a little silly because there might be a perfectly good reason for the man from the dumpster to be waiting in the parking lot, something that didn't have anything to do with me, but I was still, of course, nervous. The boys happily walked me to my car and waited until I drove off safely. The man didn't even so much as glance at me as I got in. I had about 10 minutes until I got to my house, and I tried to shake this weird feeling I got about the man by the dumpster. Because of this, it took me a little while to notice, but I soon realized that someone was following me. It was hard to see because the car's lights were off, but I noticed when I glanced in my rearview mirror as I drove directly under a street lamp. I started to get nervous again, drove past my house and turned back onto the main road, hoping I could lose this guy. The car stayed on my tail, and I watched in my rearview mirror as we went under a streetlight again. It was a blue Honda Accord. I pulled out my phone and called 911 and explained the situation to the dispatcher. The dispatcher advised me to drive to the nearest police station and told me she would inform the station of what was going on. I stayed on the line with her until I pulled into the police station. The Honda Accord drove right past. There was a police car waiting outside the station that took off after the man, but ultimately there was nothing they could do, besides give him a ticket for driving with his lights off. My description of the man by the dumpster matched the driver of the Accord. I don't know what he had planned, but I haven't seen him since. I told my boss about the incident, so I won't have to take the trash out on my own anymore. I live in an apartment centered in a cluster of 3-story buildings surrounded by woods and roads. It's never been a great place, but also not an extreme ghetto location or anything like that. More or less hanging on a thin thread of becoming a rough neighborhood. I had moved there in hopes of starting a family, which failed, but that's a story for another day. Next to my apartment house lives my mother, and an exact copy of mine. I would visit her on a daily basis due to her persistent hounding of me to do so, and in the apartment next to hers lived a man we shall call Brad. You see, Brad used to go to special school due to his severe autism. He would gain help from a social worker, and on occasion they would come by and clean up his apartment. He would always make sure to say hello and smile with this big bright smile, correcting his glasses as he told us the importance of bowling. But he was alone, and he couldn't find love very easily. Brad was homosexual, and having problems with his social skills that made it very hard for him to gain a man. So when my mother saw another man kiss Brad on the cheek and leave, it made her very happy for him. But then the odd visits started to happen. The man seemed to have a wife and child, which both started to live at Brad's apartment. They would greet us with a polite smile, telling us in detail how they came to our country just a year ago, and lots of things we really didn't ask for, praising my mother's looks as well. They would open the door if we walked up to my mom's apartment, just to talk, even suggesting for us to attend them to the church, but we declined since neither of us are religious of that kind. The man would also occasionally knock on my door by mistake, saying he thought it was Brad's apartment. One time even stood in my hallway after I forgot to lock the door by mistake. Brad then started to write me on Facebook, complaining about how they kept moving his books or would borrow money and never give it back. I told him to either tell them to pay him or just move out. He simply sent a thumbs up, and I would not see him until a week later, in which he was heading to do some bowling. He seemed extra cheerful, and we promised to take a look at his new bike when he got home with it tomorrow. Sadly, though, that would never come to be, because 2 days later, a blood-curdling scream could be heard from the house, and what I thought was a woman ran across the field outside the apartment and vanished amongst the buildings. I took a blanket and stood on the balcony, hoping to get a glance of the person who had run off, but nothing. It would take well over an hour before I finally heard someone arguing outside. It was the smiling man on the phone with someone, and another man in distress screaming to the phone for someone to come. I walked out on my balcony, which was not very high from the ground, and asked what was wrong. The person, Brad is dead, the man cried, now sitting on his knees. The smiling man, not showing any emotions, kept speaking to the person on the phone, and asked me, where are we? We're at Lavender Road 66 at 7744. Why? The smiling man repeated it, and it would take 15 minutes for an ambulance and police to show up. At 4 a.m. the police knocked on my door to ask questions, but I could only tell them what I knew. I would later search up his cousin on Facebook, in distress, asking her to check on Brad. She denied anything had happened to him, and blocked me. I felt a bit guilty. Perhaps I had been wrong, but sadly no. After weeks of rumors between neighbors, on a forum it became confirmed. Brad had been killed in the most gruesome way one can imagine, and the one who did it? The smiling man. He would deny murdering Brad, saying it was what he wanted, but a sex game gone wrong had ended his life. A newspaper would publish pictures of a reenactment of the crime. He had been tied down, with weights on ropes around his neck, and other things I just can't write down here. Clearly, this was no sex game. A story would be painted up, how Brad and this man had a relationship, that his faith would be an issue if he became caught with another man, and how they used Brad for money and living rent-free, how he would send letters to my mother asking for her hand. But thankfully, the man would gain 15 years in prison, plus being sent home to his native country and barred from entering this one forever. He tried to get it overturned, of course, but it was no use. The evidence towards him was stacked up, and the question came to me if I wanted protection. I said no, because somehow, I think he won't be back. But that being said, smiling man, let's not meet ever again, and I hope you burn in hell.